Hello everyone, this is Fred again for the second video on AirlandFS tutorial. I'm gonna teach you all the secrets of the application. So during the previous video, I briefly mentioned about how to set up your controls in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I'm gonna show you what I have. So as you see, I have a Thrustmaster 16000 type of joystick, and my sensitivities are set this way. So all straight lines, nothing. Okay, so if I check this, it all works. It's all straight, no nothing. Okay, and this is the best way, in my opinion, to set up the controls for flying helicopters. I have here my AirlandFS application. Now that I'm here, you're gonna be able to see those numbers here, where you can check if you have full authority on everything. So my cyclic, you see the number here goes from -1 to top 1. I'm moving it forward and moving it back. The pedals all the way to the left and the right, and obviously this one is not used. And the twist grip is actually the governor, which you can enable. I'll do another tutorial on how to do that if you really want to try. I actually set it up to the propeller 1 pitch. So if you have an axis, you can set it to that, and you can then go and disable the governor here, and you should be able to fly with the governor. I did some tests, but I don't have an axis, an extra axis on my joystick, so it worked with the buttons, but well, give it a try if you want to. So the governor is actually the power for the helicopters. Helicopters have an automatic power management system called the governor. It is actually a spring connected to the cyclic plus some adjustment in many cases, especially for small helicopters such as the Robinson 44. Then more advanced helicopters have more advanced governors, especially if they are twin engines and such. So going back to AirlandFS, I wanted to show you the inputs, and I'm gonna show you a few other things. So, for example, I read on the on Discord and such. Sometimes people say, "Hey, I think your settings are not, you know, sensitive enough," but you can really change whatever you want in AirlandFS. So, as I mentioned before, AirlandFS will go and look into your community in the profiles in the single helicopters. So here I have, for example, the H60. As long as within the airplane there is a file called Airland underscore something, it will read that as soon as I load the plane. Sorry, the helicopter. But you also have this directory which actually overrides the thing, and it's called the profiles directory. Here you have a number of settings, and you see I have Airland and Airland Fred. By default, it will load the one that's called AirlandFS underscore helicopter name. So if you copy the file from the airplane folder into this profile, this one will override the airplane folder. But you can also create, some test profile. So if I do Control C and Control V, and I call this test, for example, and keep it there, it will not be loaded by default. And we're gonna fly with that one, so you can see what happens. But I can go here and say load profile, and I'm gonna load the test profile here, and now it's loaded. You see profile loaded, and I can open it using Notepad++, which is a tool I suggest you use. As an ini file, I can zoom in and I can start changing some parameters. Well, obviously I did the software, so I know all the parameters, what they do. For example, sometimes people say, "Oh, I have my pedals that are wobbling in a way." Let's see how we can adjust that. Or maybe it's too sensitive, not enough sensitive. So I'm here, and I'm gonna now take off and maybe change some settings. Always remember, I mean, I'm flying professional. If you're learning, just go back to uh, casual pilot all the way. It's gonna be much easier. I'm flying professional. If you find it hard, go back to casual. So I like to have my numbers here because so I can check what's going on. So I put it there. And the way to, if I click on Flight Simulator, obviously this is the thing opening the door, and I want it on top. You have to just click on Windows always on top, otherwise it will go behind Flight Simulator. I'll keep it on top and go to my settings here, and well, close my door. This is something, a little glitch in the in the 3D model. And so another thing from the previous video, you remember I had the VNE at 100 knots because actually I checked and we were high at a high altitude. I mean, this airport is at 1,600 feet if it's properly regulated. The other one was way higher, and this is why I had this VNE, so never exceed velocity, which is a speed you should never exceed with helicopters. That was at 100 knots. Here it says actual VNE 128. If I go higher, you'll see this one moving to lower numbers because the air density is lower. So let's take off and do some flight. Maybe if you don't like something, we're gonna change it. My engines are on. Um, I have the audio off so I can record the video, but there is also some nice audio. Okay, and now I'm taking off with my helicopter. It says the parking brakes are engaged, and okay, we ignore it. It's gonna go away. And I still think I have this issue with the frame rate, which are not that great. And let's do some maneuvers here. So you see, maybe you think it's you want to use it at full realism and change some settings. Maybe you think that the helicopter stability is too stable, or you have this wobbling thing with the pedals. Let's see if I can if I manage to have this thing happening, like wobbling. Well, what happens is, for example, now if I put some left pedal or right pedal, it will start to wobble. You see, I'm okay. Heavy wobble. I just put a lot of pedals. What happened here, if you look in the bottom right window and you look at the horizontal and vertical stabilizer numbers, they're gonna, especially the vertical stabilizer, will increase substantially and create a torque in the other direction. I also get a message. Uh, so when I let go, the stabilizer will stabilize itself. Okay. Sometimes people say that you get those some wobblings like that. I mean, in my case, you see they fully stabilize. Okay, now I reached my VNE, and I want the helicopter to stabilize a little bit more quickly. So let's just do that. I don't need to. I don't need to land. I can just ask because it's gonna be paused. Let's go in my profile, and I'm flying with the flight profile here, and say auto stabilization. Well, the dynamic stabilization is 300. Let's put it at 600 here. So I'm just changing a parameter. And so dynamic stabilization is basically the drag of rotation. So the rotation will progressively reduce, whereas auto stabilization is, applying less force. And this is a way to make it easier to fly. Um, so if I this one is much more dramatic, this one is less. So I just change this number to 600, and I can go here in my profile and now go in the thing and say load profile, and I'm gonna load the test profile again. Now I have this higher stabilization value, and see how it goes. Going back to Microsoft Flight Simulator, resume. I'm still flying, still at my speed. The application was paused, and if I now do the same thing with my pedals, you'll probably see, let's hope, that it will Okay, you see how quickly it stabilizes. Uh, so this is just to show you how to change parameters very quickly. Uh, I think now I just change this parameter, but I feel it a little heavy and leggy. Uh, Obviously, helicopters do rotations, and so I'm kind of damping too much my rotation. I think it flies too much like a maybe heavier helicopter. Let me go back into my config file and go back, and maybe this one I'm gonna put it to 100, okay? And auto stabilization to 0, because I think I really auto stabilization is kind of dampening the velocities as they happen, whereas the dynamic one is once they reach the velocity. It's a little complex to explain. Uh, I'm just setting it now to 0 and or maybe even 50, so you'll see what happens. And maybe I also think that obviously those are numbers that are derived from physical calculations, so I wouldn't suggest you change them. But some of them, like the stabilization numbers, and especially at the bottom, you have a in the simulation things, I'm kind of adjusting. Those are adjusting. For example, main rotor torque. When I calculate it from the physics, it's a little bit stronger. So I'm gonna put it at 1, which is exactly how I calculated in AirlandFS. Going back here, load profile, and see how it flies now. This is, you can easily do that. And if you want to set it as your default profile, just change the test. Maybe this is the one it's gonna load by default, and in the version you're gonna download this will, these profiles will be empty. So just go to the aircraft folder, copy the profile in your custom profile folder, and rename it as leave it as it is and change it as you please. If it has exactly this name, which is the AirlandFS underscore R44 name, which is the ADC name, which appears up here. um, Hold on, helicopter type. No, it's not there because obviously it's the ATC name, I'm going to show it very briefly to you, is in the community Robinson 44 sim object airplanes Robinson 44 aircraft config. Okay, you say you have the ATC model here R44. This is the value that has to match this value here with the prefix of AirlandFS and underscore right before. So this is the way AirlandFS recognizes the various aircraft. So I think I loaded it. Let me just load profile again just to make sure. Okay, and go back to MSFS and see now how she flies. Okay, go back, resume. Okay, oh yes, something's going on here. Oh, all right, let me just land very quickly, and I crashed. Okay, cool. Now, I changed my settings, and let's see what happens as I fly. So you might remember from the previous video, I took off at 100% realism with no pedals to show you what was going on. Let's see what happens here. Okay, well, I have much stronger control here. Uh, there is very little angular damping. It's gonna be a lot more snappy and hard to fly. So here I have my pedals at 61% or 50%, something like that. If I let go, this is what happens, okay? And because I'm not damping the speeds anymore, I can still fly. I think, I fly real Robinson 44, and I think a little bit of stabilization should be there. Uh, the torque, I think, is realistic. Okay. Now let me get some speed and raise, and as you see, I still have some 34% pedals. Uh, as I reach speed, I can really let the pedals go because my stabilizer will, it has this oscillation thing, but my stabilizer is actually taking over the, is taking over the stabilization. Okay, I can even, very quick, I can adjust the pedals to stop that as well if you have this jumping things, sometimes you have to do that. It will go to zero eventually. It's just him adjusting the thing. Obviously, he's way more snappy. And I really like, sometimes to fly like this. Uh, if you're good with the helicopter, it gives you much more of a sense of speed and what you can do. Okay, so that was a quick video on how to do your settings. Let me just do a quick stop here and okay, and land. Possibly not entering a vortex swing state. Okay, I entered vortex swing state, but you can get in and out. Oh, let me do that. Yeah, let me explain you how vortex swing state works. Um, Vortex swing state is a condition where the helicopter will suck into his own air, and it happens when you, well, first of all, when you're going down at certain power level. Well, offer and So you should really descend below 500 feet a second. So the risk is, especially if you descend in vertically, so with no forward speed or very low forward speed, you can enter vortex ring state. Uh, if you go further down the speed, like let's say you are at about 1000, you'll exit from below. So you'll exit the vortex from below, or you can exit the vortex because you change the, you get out of the vortex because you go ahead, like I'm doing now. You move forward, or you move sideways, and this is called the Vuchard maneuver from the French-Swiss guy, Vuchard, since I'm French, I can say it properly, who invented it. Okay, you see I have a lot of wobbling here, and this is due to the stabilization, but let's leave it this way, it doesn't bother me. It's gonna stabilize in a second. I want to show you the vortexing state. So the vortexing state is that itself is not very dangerous if at high altitude. It can be very dangerous if you're close to the ground, because if you're at high altitude, you'll end up, being able to solve it. Okay, let me just, have the helicopter at almost zero speed, which is very hard when you are high because you don't realize how, I mean, you have no visual reference in as if you're going backward, forward, and such. So maybe I might not be able to enter vortex state. Let's just, you know, put my collective down a little, and I'm going forward too much. Okay, let me see if I can stop this thing. Should be no wind. See, I'm here. Maybe I'm already in the conditions. Let's see. Okay, I'm entering vortex state. You see the helicopter goes a little bit everywhere, but then I'm exiting from the bottom. Okay, but you saw my vertical speed went down substantially. And another way to exit vortexing state is, as I said, with the Vuchard maneuver. Obviously, I need a little bit more height to do that, but I will not go as high because otherwise I don't have visual reference on the ground on my speeds. Okay, I'm about here. And now I'm almost there. Okay, let me go a little bit up. Let's see if I enter the vortex wind state here, about here. Now, because maybe I'm flying sideways. Uh, see. Okay, in fact, you can. Okay, oh, yeah, you can. It was close. You can move sideways, and this is the Vuchard maneuver to get out of the vortex ring state. All right, guys. Thank you, and up to the next video. Bye bye. Quick landing here.